First of all, can I say Happy New Year from Table Tennis Scotland as we review the second half of 2020. Once again, I am joined tonight by 12-time Scottish champion Ewan Walker and multi-sports champion Joan Smith. We've had a few birthdays since last time. One of our guests, Craig Bryan, he had a birthday while we've been away. Ken Muir, one of the top senior coaches down south, has always had a birthday. And there's been a birthday that's been kept under wraps. We're very disappointed. I've got to bring it up on air. That last time we was on Zoom, I was asking for birthdays. And one of the panelists, Holly McNamara, had her birthday the day before and didn't tell us. So happy birthday, Holly, from all those weeks ago. Holly McNamara, well done. Okay, Mark, unfortunately, with the latest lockdown, has had to pull out. But it's typically Matt Norbury will be picking up your questions on YouTube and emails or anything on the social. But please fire away anything that's happened the last 20 or 30 weeks, guests, questions you've forgotten to ask, then Ewan, Joan and myself will pick them all up. One of our very first Zoomcasts we did, or it was the second one, it was Friends and Rivals with Ewan Walker and Ian Stokes, and how they got to know each other, different backgrounds, got to play with each other, got to compete with each other, played nationals together, and it was a fantastic session. But during that time, Ewan needed to spread his wings, and he left domestic table tennis, well, didn't leave it totally, and we got him fixed up in the National League, or the British National League, which also led to him playing abroad. And this will come more to home to most of you, because most of the previous Zoomcasts we've had who have played full time, like Gavin Rumgate, etc., or Colin Wilson, they've been full time. Ryan Jenkins, Charlotte Carey, they've all been full time and gone to play abroad, where Ewan continued to study and also was in employment. So I'm going to pick it up, Ewan. You've started to play for Scotland. You're very comfortable at home, and I sent you down to Edinburgh. Can you tell us how that went?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Dave. No, I think that's right. You joined the association and obviously had very good links with the likes of Colin Wilson, Graeme Sandley, and the team down at Edinburgh. So I think the previous season they had Nigel Tyler from Wales was their player, but he was moving on to a different club, so they had a space. And I remember getting the train down to London. It was on my 18th birthday. Got the train down to London and essentially went for a trial. I had a session with Graeme and Colin, and that went well. They were keen to have me in the team, so I joined and I played at Edinburgh, which is kind of North London, kind of Enfield area. So I played there, I think, for about 2 years, maybe from memory. And the team then was it was myself, Graeme Sandley, Colin Wilson. And then the fourth spot rotated a little bit. Ian McLean played there for a while, good old Scottish name. Nick McCoy as well was another name that played at that time as well. So that was really good. And it was a really good progression, because having played, just broken into the national team, I'd played several years of Scottish National League, and really it was a chance to continue that kind of journey and essentially just getting exposed to playing better matches, better players on a regular basis. So at that time, each match was handled individually. It wasn't all grouped together in some central venue. So I was travelling down to England every 2 or 3 weeks, every second or third weekend, and playing National League matches down there. And that was great. I think we maybe talked about Graeme Sandley a little bit in one of the previous kind of Zoomcasts, but Graeme was kind of England number 2, a really kind of top quality England player. And so, it was great just as a young player, just getting that experience of playing, next to, Graeme Sandley, playing next to Colin Wilson again, who had lots of experience. And so that was really kind of a good timing for me to go and say, play that better level in the English National League. And certainly at that time, the likes of Grove Table Tennis Club were really big. They had Des playing, they had Cookie playing, a number of other good players. Also Matt Side and Kevin Satchel, a bunch of good players across the league. So it was a really good standard for me to go and kind of test myself. So I played there for a couple of years, and I think Ellenborough, continued on, but it just started to kind of dissipate a little bit. I think maybe Graeme Sandley was moving off into other ventures, and it kind of split two ways. First, I think I'm now getting a bit hazy. This is kind of 30 years ago, but I think I moved to Grove Table Tennis Club there, and the lure of going and practicing and playing with the likes of Des and Cookie was kind of too good an opportunity to miss. So I went and played at Grove for a year or two, maybe at most, and that was good. We'd travel down on the Saturday. We would practice as a squad on the Saturday at Grove, which is kind of Shropshire area. And then we'd play our matches on the Sunday. So again, as a kind of progression from Ellenborough to Grove was really good. And then continuing that journey in British League, I then moved over to Sedgefield. There was a club there that Keith Wilson was organising and running, and Ian Stokes was playing there at the time. And I think Sedgefield had maybe come up into the Premier Division. We're looking for players, and I took the opportunity, joined up with Ian at Sedgefield, and played there for a year or two. And then my final hop in British League was then back into Drumchapel, and moved from Sedgefield to Drumchapel. So again, Drumchapel having established themselves into the Premier League in the British League, then again it was too good an opportunity to miss and come and play for the home team. So that was really good, and I say that was my kind of journey in British League. What happened kind of through that period is that certainly in the early 90s to kind of mid 90s, there was a number of British players were playing in Belgium at the time. And one of them, Graeme Sandley, he was playing over in Belgium at the time, and he'd been playing for a club called Barina. He was kind of moving on and wasn't able to kind of play the next season. So he kind of fixed up with the club and asked me if I would go and join this club in Belgium. So I played over in Belgium for a year, and I know through some of the previous Zoom casts, as you said, we've touched on this playing abroad topic a number of times. So in my case in Belgium, it was I think at that time I was studying or just started working. So I was very much just a hired hand. I would go over on the weekend, stay, I would play the match, and then come home. So it was a fairly kind of flying visit. Belgium was good. It was a strong division at that time. I was number 2 in my team. I played, the number 1 was a guy called Martin Bratenoff, who went and played for Belgium. Was a really good player, and the league was, it was a good standard, but there was one outstanding team with the Save brothers in it. I think my kind of recollection of Belgium was it was a strong standard. It was good again as another kind of stepping stone to stretch myself and play better players, but it was slightly mercenary in the sense of they would only bring me over if it was a match that either they wanted to win, but it was going to be a close match. So if it was one that they were going to win comfortably, they would just go with the local players. Or if it was a match they were going to lose comfortably, again, they would just go with the local players. So they tended to use the foreign players just kind of tactically when they wanted to win a close match. So it was fine. I stayed there for a year, and I think that time I did okay, but I wasn't amazing in any way, so the club kind of wanted to try somebody else, which was fine. So it was only a fairly brief dalliance with Belgium. However, a few years later, I think it was the end of the 90s, so I was mid to late 20s by this stage, when we were over, I think it was the European Championships or World Championships over in Eindhoven. I was approached by a team from Switzerland, a club from Switzerland, and they were looking for a player. They had just come up into the top division in Switzerland, and so I kind of joined this club, and I ended up staying there for 3 years. They're called Horgen. And Switzerland did things a little bit differently. They grouped together kind of 2 matches over a weekend. So I was living down south at this time. I was living down in Farnborough in Hampshire. So it was about half an hour away from Heathrow Airport. So actually it worked out really well. On a Friday evening, I would take a quick dash to Heathrow, get on a flight to Zurich. The club was just not too far from Zurich. I would play my match Saturday, play match Sunday, and then get a flight back on Sunday evening back to London. So it was a really kind of busy, really condensed time when I was away, but it kind of worked out really well, and really kind of well for the circumstances I had at the time. I think, when we've talked about, or some of the guys, your previous guests have talked about playing abroad, I think it really depends a little bit on the stage of their development that they're at. And for me, certainly, if I think about Switzerland, I would say late 20s, I was working, and so it was very much only as a kind of a weekend activity, playing matches. So it absolutely suited me fine to be able to go out, play the matches at the weekend, and then come back and do my normal kind of working week thereafter. That's not to say, though, that would necessarily work so well for a young player who's very much still at the early developmental stage of their career. For those type of players, I think you would probably be better served to go and spend a prolonged period of time, several months or a year, actually away and living and taking in the practice at that time. So I think that playing abroad experience does what you want, and what you can get out of it does depend on your stage of career that you're at. I say, for me, playing at weekends, Switzerland worked out really well. Good standard, and good quality matches. But I say, for others, it might not work so well. And following a path like the likes of Martin Johnson or Danny Badgewa talked about, in terms of going and living over in Dusseldorf for a year, that's probably, I say, a better answer if you want to kind of really try and progress your game. Certainly, I say, at that time, late 20s, the chance to get some new competition against new people, good quality opposition, I think at that time worked out really well for me. And I think, as I mentioned at the last kind of review session we had, one of the good things about playing abroad and experiencing abroad is just being able to open your horizons a little bit. Just recognise and don't get too fixated in the local or the national scene here in Scotland. Actually, it expands your horizons and just lets you see, good quality players and how they prepare, how they play, how they think, and just be part of that. So it's a good way of expanding your horizons. So I would definitely encourage people to, if there is an opportunity to play abroad, to seek it out and to jump at it, but being kind of mindful of what you're going to get out of it, and think about how does that fit in with the stage of the career that you're at any one point in time.
Excellent summary there. Excellent. Jaron, anything for you in before I hand over to you? Any questions you'd like to pose about him playing abroad?
Not really. I'm just quite impressed with everything that you've done, and in awe of you.
No, thank you. I mean, again, I guess circumstances dictate a lot as well, doesn't it? And we do have to recognise that being in Scotland, it becomes a bit more difficult to make these quick weekend dashes across to the continent. I was at that particular time, I was lucky. I was living down near Heathrow, so you got much better links, and to many different places. So again, circumstances played to my favour there, and so certainly was able to make advantage of it. But nonetheless, I say it's definitely an experience I would recommend people try and seek out as a way of expanding themselves and furthering their development. So definitely a positive experience, on the whole for me.
Okay, well then, partway through the second sessions, if you like, part two, we had a completely different take when we had Joan, multi-champion. At one time, she was the champion at tennis, squash, and badminton. I've now got one of those: table tennis, squash, and badminton. Is that correct?
Yeah, not tennis. I haven't done much tennis at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Joan.
Yeah.
And all at the same time, and also represented Scotland at table tennis at the 1997 Commonwealth Champions, which you still say was one of the highlights of your sporting career, Joan.
Yeah, definitely.
It was interesting because I paired Joan with Sue Strachan. They both played national squash together. It's not called veterans, it's called
Masters.
And it's over 35s, isn't it? Not over 40s. And so Joan and Sue knew each other, and it was interesting because Joan's been heavily involved in table tennis with all her other sports, and Sue Strachan has not been involved in table tennis, but again has played multi-sport. How did you reflect on that session, Joan?
I thought it was excellent. I realised from speaking with Sue that we live remotely. She lives down at the Borders. I live up in Shetland. We don't have coaches, so our best thing is training partners. So from that session, I realised that I've been so lucky to have training partners, not just in table tennis but squash, just every game that I've played, and so has Sue. So she's relied on that. I've relied on it, and that has taken the place of a coach. And then when a coach does come up, you're hungry to learn. So, we maybe pay much more attention to any coaches that do come up because we just want to further our game and get better. But no, I thought the session was really good. There was a few things I wanted to say and I forgot to say about it. I mean, as a PE teacher, I teach all different sports, and I think table tennis is my favourite one. And I teach at 3 schools, and we're so lucky. At one of my schools, I've got 8 table tennis tables. Another school, I've got 6. And my other school has 1. But then when we do table tennis, all the children lift their desks through to the badminton court. It's 1 badminton court. And we make 8 tables, all shapes and sizes. We don't have nets. We just put books or anything in the middle. And the kids just love it. So it doesn't really matter at that stage. When you're a total beginner, as long as you've got a surface, you've got a bat and you've got a ball and you've got a partner, then you can learn the game. So that is one of the benefits of table tennis. And also in COVID just now, with everybody being locked down, people could move the plates and everything off the table and just get a bat and ball out and start playing. And you can play at any age, which is fantastic. In the past, what I've done to try to help new players along was I'd have a big family fun event, and you'd invite the granddads, the grannies, the parents, the kids, and they would all come in. We'd just all mix in and play for about 3 hours, just have fun session. And then from there, we tried to maybe catch some of the boys and some of the girls that wanted to take it a little bit further. And then you already had the backing from the parents and the grandparents. You had the transport links, you had everything. So I just find table tennis a good game just to catch a lot of people. I think being a PE teacher at 3 schools as well, you can select your audience and you know who concentrates, who's got good hand-eye coordination. So you can already try and encourage certain people to come along. But no, table tennis is such a good game. And if you already play other racket sports, you can easily transfer your skills. You don't have to be particularly fit. You're not moving so far around the table. So a granddad could play with the little ones and so on. So no, I think table tennis is a fantastic game. And it's probably my favourite one teaching as a teacher. And from a block of lessons, I would then say, right, we're having table tennis at lunchtime. Does anybody want to come along? And then take it from there. And then we've had a breakfast club sometimes. And then we did have a coach up, Andy Crawford. He used to play in Falkirk, Stirling area. Now he plays in Forfar, I think. So he came up for 2 years and we set up a junior league and we had 30 kids playing. But then he left and it's kind of collapsed again. He was retired, so he had plenty of time to do that. So I just assisted. But then he's gone and it's kind of fallen flat. We also had Chris Graeme in Shetland. For years he did so much coaching and now he's kind of left. So we did have 4 leagues up and running, and then because he's left, it's all kind of fallen down. But just now,
and Archie Constable.
Yeah, Archie Constable is still here. Yeah.
And Andrew Blackadder.
Yes, they're all still playing.
One,
Dougie Hutchins, he's still here. We do have, well, when COVID is finished, hopefully we'll go back to our leagues. We have 2 leagues, an A league and a B league, with 12 players in each league. We don't have any clubs at all, so we're starved of competition and everything. So my friend and I, we came down last year to Bathgate 4 times, and it just sounded like you and going away for the weekend. You were going abroad, but we were coming from Shetland. We'd finish work on Friday, go down at 3:30, and then we would go back Monday morning at 6:30 to start work at 8 o'clock. So you were giving up your whole weekend for a day. Well, it was good though. The competition at Bathgate's fantastic. The amount of veterans that play is like, there was about 80 playing, all different ages. I just thought it's fantastic. But no, table tennis is a super game to play, especially just now with COVID, because you can't go anywhere else. Can't do any other sport really.
Yeah. Just on a general point there, John, in terms of that being in Shetland, how does that remoteness, if you like, geographical remoteness, do you think that is that something that gets the players down a little bit in terms of, or they see that as, just c'est la vie and get on with it? I mean, how does that kind of influence the perspective of the players? And
well, we've got everybody in Shetland plays a lot of different sports, and I think when you get to a certain level, you need more competition. And then to get more competition, it's money, time, you're flying or you're taking the boat, or if it's children, they're missing a bit of school because they have to leave early on a Friday. They might not get back on a Monday. So, I think grassroots level for a lot of sports in Shetland is very good, very high, because you've got a captive audience. But it's taking it to the next step is the difficult bit. But if you're happy just playing at grassroots level and not going any further, then you're fine. But we really need people to come into the island to then pull the better ones higher. Like Dave used to come a few times many years ago, and that would raise our standard. And then some of us started going south for competitions. But it's just the money, the time, the commitment. And I used to play in, about 92 to 97, but there was nobody that was that keen to play. So I didn't really have a practice partner. We did have a robot, but it's not as good as a person. And so I think that was so frustrating for me that I thought I needed to switch sports. And squash, you can go and practice yourself. So if nobody turns up at squash, you can just practice, or you can just run around and get fitter. But table tennis, you need someone there. So there is frustrating bits, but people get to quite a good level and then go south. Like Linda Flaws, she was amazing. I don't know how many weekends she gave up to get down there, and it's just, she's fantastic how she.
No, absolutely, she did really well.
Yeah.
Right. Just before Christmas, here in Moffat, we've got a wonderful rugby club. Absolutely wonderful. They're really community based. They came round with Santa on a sleigh and gave presents and judged all the houses on the lights to get all the kids involved. So I took my 2 grandsons social distancing to rugby. It was about -3 the sleet was coming down horizontally, the pitch was rock hard, the coaches were freezing, and all the sessions finished about 15 minutes earlier, with some of the kids in tears and some of them could hardly move. And I sat and thought about that. If all these kids were playing table tennis, it doesn't rely on weather, it's space efficient, and it is inexpensive. So, you know, the effort to actually play rugby is massive compared to the effort to play table tennis. You know, we ought to be doing a lot better. Which also, going back to Joan, you touched on Linda Flores. Can you, I mean, I remember her helping with the demos. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of how she got involved and your role in that involvement to national champion? Because you certainly won't come on air to tell us.
Well, at Dunrosson's Primary School, that's one of the schools that we've got 6 tables at. I used to do PE lessons. It was all table tennis. And then at break time, we used to have one table right through in another room that the kids could just go and play on. Well, when Linda was primary 4, she was just about the height of the table. Hope she doesn't mind me saying that. And then there was one table and there was a whole queue of boys and girls, and it was a 1-point rally, winner stays on. And Linda would start at the beginning of break time and she would win every point, and everybody would have to queue up. So that was her kind of first competition. But she used to practice at home. I don't know what age she was, because her older brother, Alwyn, used to get coaching with Chris, and he was one of the ones that went south. And Linda used to just tag along. I think she might be about 4 or 5 years younger than her brother. So she would tag along and she'd be hitting a bat and ball while he was doing the shots. And then she came into the practices and played in all our leagues. And then she went south. I don't know what the youngest age group was. It might be in schools. So I don't know if that was under 10 or under 12. But I think she won every single age group, including the ladies as well. Played in all the Island Games events that Shetland is part of too. And in 2005, the games were in Shetland, and she won a team event and a mixed doubles and a ladies doubles medal. So that was fantastic. And then I think she played as an adult for a few years, but she graduated as a physiotherapist, and I think she's now busy doing that. Just like you, and you probably sacrificed your weekends, your social life, everything. I think she's just now reliving some of those moments that she never had. But no, she's the best player that Shetland has produced, that's for sure.
Yeah, I remember coaching her for 1 or 2 matches at the Commonwealth Games as well in Glasgow.
Yeah,
when she represented Scotland there, and she fantastic fighter, good strokes, fantastic fighter, real competitive spirit, and I think that just echoes back to what you said in terms of her kind of setting camp on the table for the whole break time and not being moved by anything. So it's a fantastic achievement for what she did achieve, coming from Shetland, and a great ambassador as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to Ewan now, because he touched on his time in Edinburgh. And obviously that was probably the first time you met Colin Wilson, played with Colin Wilson. And I know that you was keen and you watched Colin and Adam's and Sam's podcast. What was your reflection on those, Ewan?
Yeah, because there was 2 of them, wasn't it? There was two sessions. I mean, both really information rich. They're actually crammed full of nuggets of things. There, but really kind of analytical, really considered approach to kind of the game. You could see that in all of them, the Wilson family. So it was really interesting to listen to that. I mean, there's lots you can pick out. I was kind of interested listening to Adam, and I remember in one of our earlier Zoomcast days, we talked about my kind of past playing against choppers and and a pretty good record against Chopper. So it was interesting listening to Sam, and particularly how the game has morphed a bit into these hybrid. Did he call it a hybrid kind of player? So somebody that it can chop, and particularly say in the backhand, and then counter loop and topspin in the forehand, and so the whole kind of takeaway, that whole mantra of being a chopper doesn't mean you're a defensive player. Actually you can be very aggressive in how you play your shots and how you construct your points, but still be doing it with backspin shots. So that was really interesting, and certainly if I kind of think back to my time, that defense, the defensive players truly were kind of defensive players at that time. They didn't tend to be this kind of hybrid. And even if I think back to my matches with the likes of Matthew Side, Matthew in his core I think was a defensive player. He was fantastic at it, but it was, you could tell he was fighting demons, having to come in and attack every often. You could tell it was almost been coached. Thou shalt come in and do some attacking shots. But these kind of modern hybrid players, I think would be really tough to play against, because I say my kind of strategy that I think I talked about at the time was about trying to play with kind of quite a lot of height over the net against a defensive player, and not making sure that you're kind of cut down your mistakes and slow and then fast. But if you've got somebody staying closer to the table, being quite aggressive backspin in the chopping shot, but then coming in and looping, giving them height over the net's probably not the best thing if they've got a good counter loop. So I think just thinking about it, I think that hybrid would be a really tough style to play against. So it was interesting just to hear how the game had morphed a little bit for those kind of choppers, in the intervening years. So that was really good, and also just I think listening to Adam as well, and listening, what he had to say, and his approach to kind of reflecting on some of the matches, and particularly reflecting on defeats, and actually, maybe played the tournament on the Saturday and maybe lost, then actually the following day having a look at some video or reflecting on the defeat at that point, then setting in place any corrections on the Monday, and that's it, you're off and running again. And you could tell that, just in keeping with that very kind of analytic, very considered approach, there was a real, methodology they were applying for their coaching. So it was really interesting. I say lots of interesting anecdotes and bits of advice there. So no, it was a good session. Excellent.
There's something that impressed you, Joan, which you mentioned off air about, was it the very next day do you remember what you were saying just before we went off air?
Yeah, so if they got something wrong on the Sunday, they wanted to fix it by the Monday. So they did, and they worked on that particular shot. And I loved the fact that he said he didn't use the robot 100 miles an hour. They maybe just did one shot, and then had 30 seconds to think about what went right or wrong, and then did it again. And I thought that's excellent, really good. Another thing I liked was when someone had put a question up on YouTube, how do you deal with nerves? And they had a fantastic answer, like a 4-step approach to dealing with the nerves. And I thought that is excellent.
And one of the other kind of I recall as well was, and I think they've got a fantastic setup, a good club. Was it the Corby Smash? Is it that?
Smash,
and a good club, and they were proud of the facilities, but their view very much was actually good people and good culture is more important than good facilities. It's nice to have the facilities, but actually having a good group of coaches with the right attitude and a good group of players all willing to learn is much more important. And that was again a good reminder that actually it's about people, isn't it? And as long as you've got good people with good approaches and good attitudes, then you can get a long way. Just with that.
Right. Well, we'll move on again. I'm going to move over the period of time. We've had a number of coaches on. We've had coach-specific sessions and the player to coach, but also like to bring in the Matt Porter Zoomcast as well. We had Steve Whiting, Craig Bryant and Steve Gerson. Steve's been on a few times. He runs all our training camps. He's been big help during this lockdown period, running online sessions. They've been very good as well, been excellent. It was interesting because Steve Gerson, Steve Whiting and Craig Bryant, they didn't say they was reluctant coaches, but they kind of fell into coaching rather than thinking, right, I'm going to end my career and I'm becoming a coach. So they drifted into it. But it was interesting, again, how their approach to coaching, all young coaches as well. I don't know, Ewan, did you pick up on any of those sessions?
Yeah, it was a while ago now. I remember that. Yeah, Paul Whiting session.
Yeah.
Paul Whiting, and I remember, playing. Paul was one of my competitors in the British League at the time, and so again, he had a really, really good kind of manner to him, a good method, and so it was good to see him doing well. I'm struggling to remember too many details of that one, truthfully. I certainly recall the session with Matt Porter and Steve Gertson where we were talking about the residential camps and the sessions at Inverclyde and the kind of the value and benefits of having those residential camps and the move, that Scottish table tennis have kind of now done in terms of moving back to those residential camps, and that certainly sounded a very positive development.
Yeah.
In terms of,
I mean, what's also interesting, Ewan and Joan, is Paul Whiting really was the role model for Craig Bryant. So even when Craig became a coach, and Stephen to an extent, that they kind of dragged him back in again because they valued his input. And Paul, I mean, one of the things that Paul said, which was quite brave, he said that he felt that a lot of coaches, as soon as a parent came in the hall, that coach would gravitate towards that player, so he didn't get a hard time with the parents. And Paul says, no, everybody gets the same amount of time, whether, this parents were watching or not. But all of them were sort of practice partners, sparring partners, and then coaches. So, and we have spoken about these podcasts. There's different routes into coaching. It might be through injury, careers cut short. It might be that you just quite not made it as a player. It might be that you want to give something back to table tennis. There can be a variety of reasons. And over this last 30 podcasts, we've had coaches who have come from, all these different aspects. And if you take Brian Keane, for example, Brian was the easiest podcast of the lot because we set him off at 7:30, didn't stop talking till 8:30. And but again, what Brian Keane said is the coach, and Richard Jewell rates Brian's input into coaching as well, is that, again, he came first of all as a sparring partner because he was quite, a good player. And then he got into coaching down south, but he brought up those methods that he'd learned from. He spoke very highly of Peter Simpson and coaches of that era. And so it was interesting listening to all these different coaches we've had, current ones and older ones. And Joan, how did you find the sessions with the coaches, if you remember them?
I did watch some of them. It's just interesting to see who's gone into coaching, or when you think your playing days are over and then going into coaching, or can you be a coach and a player at the same time? So I probably dabble in playing. Like, I still want to get better at playing. I haven't learned all the shots yet, so I still want to play, but I will help coach at lunchtime, break time, and then I do teach. So it's like, I don't want to say, right, that's me finished as a player until I've actually reached where I want to try to reach. So it's interesting.
And then if we go back to yourself, Ewan, who we remember more as a player, but you've obviously done your fair share of coaching and captaining. Was it a reluctant step, or was it, yeah, I quite enjoyed that, or?
So certainly as a player, I always enjoyed the competition environment, and so I probably preferred the role of the captain on the bench,
Yeah,
as opposed to the coach in the coaching hall doing the hard graft of the Monday to Fridays so yeah, one of those glory hunters on the bench. But I think when I finished playing 2006, at that time the association didn't have a full-time coach. There wasn't funding in place, and so reluctantly, probably a little bit, but not too reluctantly, helped out with some coaching sessions during the week, and then some NPCing with the national team. But I did enjoy the competitive environment. So actually still having a chance to be involved and mix with the team was something I enjoyed, certainly for a couple of years. I think when some funding came in place, and I've forgotten the Lee Chow, was it? I think Lee Chow was it? So some funding came in place, and he got appointed as national coach. I think at that time, it was natural that obviously he took on the role as going away with the teams, and so that was kind of when I stepped back. But no, it was enjoyable while I did it. I think I probably.
Let me ask you this: how did you find captaining players who weren't as good as you, when you would have obviously felt, well, I'd just go on the table and I'd do this, that, but then that some of the players, probably you had to adapt what you felt they needed to do, rather than, and some players find that difficult. Some players would think, well, this is where I'd beat this player, so this is where I am going to advise that player to.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dave. I mean, truthfully, I don't think I was too bad at it, and partly because, in a similar vein, when you're a player and you speak to other players and you talk about, playing against opponent X, Y, or Z, in a similar manner, player A will say, well, I play this and I dig long to the backhand and then I punch the block down the line, and they'll give you a perspective that's relevant to them, but it'll be completely different for you. So I think probably all along I've kind of had that awareness that people will see things differently, and you do have to kind of obviously moderate and what you say, how it's interpreted. So I think I like to think that I wasn't too bad at that, in terms of being able to at least kind of decouple myself a little bit from the here's how I would do it, and try and be a little bit more dispassionate. But I don't know. I guess you have to ask the victims, the people that are forced to listen to me.
Well, you won the British Championship while you was coach, didn't you? You was team captain for that. I remember speaking to you.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah, you did, yeah. No, you did, yeah. Okay, right then, back to Joan. Another what I call a double header, because we couldn't get everything in. We had two lovely sessions with Sue Collier and Emma Rose. Again, Emma, PE teacher, like yourself, and Sue, who's both played table tennis from cadets to vets. Any reflections on those, Joan?
Yeah, it was good to see that the reason they still keep playing table tennis is the social side, the friendship, and having a good time, and it's fun. I think that is good. And I was just looking at the reasons that they were trying to work out why girls don't play as much table tennis, and why they drop out. I was also asking some of my sisters. I've got 3 sisters, and one is competitive like me, and the other 2 are more recreational. So they were giving me a whole list of everything, the reasons that girls possibly will drop out of sport or table tennis. It was amazing. And I think because I'm competitive and I don't care about what I look like or anything, then I just go for it. But I think a lot of girls, they lack confidence, no self-esteem. They worry about their body image massively, much more than what I do. And I think because I don't care what I look like, you know, it's unladylike how you maybe lunge over for a shot. But I think a lot of girls and women do worry about that. And that blocks a lot of participation. Like, they don't want to stretch, and they don't want to get hot and flushed and, you know, their hair all sweaty or their hair messed up or anything. Whereas the competitive ones just don't care. But I didn't realise how much that would be a barrier to playing sport. But my sister was saying all these things. Also, you know, going through puberty and changes, and you've got some big girls that play, and they're, you know, and some sports that they play, for instance, like hockey, there's wee hockey skirts, and girls like that are not wanting to be playing in a tiny hockey skirt, you know, or trampolining, gymnastics, there's a little leotard, swimsuits, you know. So all these things are barriers to girls that have a body image, you know, they're worried about their body image. There's also peer pressure as well. There's so many things. I'm just trying to see what other things they said. A lot of girls, I mean, this is not a wide sweeping statement, but a lot of girls don't want to fail. I think some boys, not all boys, they don't really care, they just go for it. But I mean, I know as like, I am competitive, but I do not want to fail, and I fear failing, whereas I think a lot of people don't care. So I think that is a barrier as well. Also, I think girls definitely join in if there is a group, if there's a group of girls, they're friends. And if they don't have that, they would easily, you know, drop out. I mean, that's the main thing. I think the body image is massive. Also anxiety, awkwardness, and there's so many barriers that a lot of girls have to try to get over if they want to play sport. And sometimes I think the barrier is too much, that it's easier to choose another option. So I thought that was very interesting. But to get girls into table tennis, I mean, in the past I've helped Graeme, the coach, I've helped Andy, and I seem to manage to get a lot of people to take part in whatever it is. We had a fun family table tennis event in Sandwick, that's where I stay, and that's the big school that I teach at. And we had like 47 came along, and that was like grandparents right down to 5-year-olds. And then from there we got a junior table tennis set up, and the majority are boys, but more than a third are girls that came along as well. So I think just making it maybe family orientated or having their friends is massive to getting girls to come along and make it. And I think a lot of girls, one of my sisters said, they're not competitive. She doesn't want to compete. She'd be happy just to make it a social and just be recreational, no competition, just have fun. And then maybe later along the line, if she was really loving it, then you could add in a little bit of competition. But I think competition scares away some girls, not all of them, but some.
And Sue Strachan pointed on that, didn't she? The anxieties,
Yeah.
the age, and
that's it.
And it was interesting because obviously on those sessions, Joan, we had Fiona Scott. That's not her name now. And Ian McLagan, and Fiona's been very steady with the table tennis. Again, she's played from cadets to vets, and she has never really worried about, you know, she's just been very steady and gone through and enjoyed it. And so no, I think there's a lot of it, and it's really, what can we do to overcome this? I mean, I often quote on this podcast, the best book title ever, not saying it was the best book, was a footballer named Malcolm McDonald, and he was a goal scoring centre forward. And his autobiography was Never Afraid to Miss. And you know, that's what we've got to say to our girls. You know, never afraid to miss. You know, whether that's missing a shot at table tennis or not being in a good body position when you play the shot. And it's really is getting that message into to cross, which isn't easy. Have you got any thoughts on that? I mean, through your long career in table tennis, you've played with in the national team, Janet Smith, Carol Dalrymple probably, or the late Carol Dalrymple, Sarah Hurry, Diane Walker, Liz Robb.
Absolutely. Some really established and accomplished players. I don't have any great insight. I recognise a lot of what Joan said there, and I think probably all that lofty list that you read out there, Dave, is they probably fall into the competitive category that Joan was talking about. That actually were just rolled up their sleeves and kind of got on with it and didn't care. But just through normal walks of life, I think you can recognise a lot of what Joan said there in terms of some of the barriers that girls do see. I mean, there's it's not purely a female thing. We all know, I'm sure, males that kind of have those some insecurities as well, but more generally, for sure, I think that girls do kind of have that, some of those barriers for sure, maybe more prevalent. So it's really tough, and I don't have any great great insight in terms of how we do better at it.
No. Anything to add on the girls' sessions, Joan? We've had Charlotte. I know we've covered them. With Alison Brough, we've had Charlotte Carey. We've had our young girls all on the Zoom cast together, giving their thoughts. Any.
It's just good to hear how they've got into table tennis and how they've gone along their career and how they've been very successful. And they're all, it's lovely just hearing their journey along the road.
And I think that's where these Zoomcasts have been really good, Dave, in terms of celebrating those different stories and those different characters and the journeys everybody's been on. So it's been good to get that balance of it's not just the elite players, it's also say elite females or the coaches or the umpires, and I think that's been one of the real strengths, is hearing that range of stories. And I say there's been certainly lots of good female guests.
I remember the very first podcast, I think you was on the first one, wasn't you, Joan, with Jill Parker, or Jill Hammersley, she was there. And that, obviously Jill, MBE, world number 6. And I wanted to get into the mindset of serving for the European Championships. So there you are, you're in the hall, and it's match point. And I was almost nervous asking the question because I had my own imagination being in the hall. But to some extent, it was just another point for Jill. I couldn't, I couldn't build up her nerves asking the question. She was quite calm about it. And she felt she had a good chance. And then 2 years later, she lost in the European final, and she won the top 12. But she was able to handle her defeats and bounce back really well. But she had an incredible presence when she played, an incredible presence. Ewan had in Scotland, that once he went on the table, I think he was halfway there to winning. Some players have that presence. And, it was interesting that Jill didn't have those anxieties at all when she played. And so that in itself was an interesting podcast. And then towards the end, obviously we covered Des a lot last week. We only touched on Nikki Jarvis. If ever there was a true ambassador, professional player, coach, Nikki Jarvis, wonderful trainer, great team man. And I felt the session with Nikki, both as a player and as a parent, bringing Matthew into football and giving him a few hard lessons and making sure he carried on, and he did. I don't know how you found those sessions, Ewan.
I mean, one thing Nicky was before my time, sure. So I never saw him play, but very great pedigree. How close was he to Des in terms of?
Yeah, when he first played Des in the mid-70s, when he first played him in the national final, Nicky had a marathon against Dennis Neal, probably the best match I'd ever seen in the semi-final. And then he played Des in the final, and probably Nicky might have been favourite then. But I think Nicky was incredibly fit, but he'd had a marathon session, and Des won his first national championship. At that time, 1975, 76, then Des went off to Germany, and then what Nicky said, he was miles ahead of everybody within a year. And through Des's career, like Don Parker and Des were juniors together, then all of a sudden Des got much better than Don, you know, and Nicky Jarvis felt the same. There was the same standard for a while. Then Des went to Germany, and his standard was just miles better than anyone else. So they were close for probably 74, 75, 76. And then obviously Nicky then started to get injuries as well, but Des moved up at a completely different level. And that went 10 years without losing to anybody in the UK. Well, I think it was more than 10 years. But Nicky was Nicky won 3 against Japan in the World Championships, and at that time, Japan were one of the best teams in the world. So Nicky Jarvis had that ability to produce those big results, but just not as often as Des.
Yeah, no, and very forehand dominated from what I understand.
That game against Dennis Neal, I don't remember him playing a backhand. You know, it was going forehand across, and they both knew each other's game so well. It was an incredible feat of fitness, brilliant footwork, managed to get in a good position every time to play his loop, and Dennis Neal with his superb reflexes and table know-how, produced one of the best, certainly the best match between two English players I've ever seen, I would say, even till this day.
Wow. Yeah, no,
right. I'm trying to think. I think we covered it a little bit last week. It was lovely to have our own coaches on as well, with Dylan De Silva and Chris Main. And one's instrumental in coaching Danny Badgewell, and the other one's instrumental and Chris instrumental in coaching Martin Johnson. And it was good how the two have worked together as coaches. They've brought the players together as coaches. They've sent the players off to play abroad. And I felt that was, a great advert for Table Tennis Scotland, actually, where the domestic coaches have produced the players and had the foresight to encourage them to play abroad. So, yeah, that was a pretty good one. Any questions on those?
Well, just on that one as well, I think it's also important then for the coaches to have the opportunities to experience kind of international competition themselves, and I'll give them a chance to expand their knowledge, and that was good to see in terms of the likes of, like I said, Dylan, moved in and done some NPCing, and Chris, we know, is quite well traveled and stuff. So I think that's a really important. It's important for the longevity of Scottish table tennis, isn't it? To be able to produce players, be able to be big enough to allow to hand them on to other coaches and experience other experience, but also then for those coaches to continue to develop and get national experience and international experience. So no, they've done a great job, and it's good to see them so actively involved.
I mean, it's in another quote which I've quoted 2 or 3 times. One of my mentors was Peter Simpson. And he always said, we learn from each other. We learn from each other. And he was the first coach that I remembered at a coaching conference when he got all these coaches together. And he said, I want you to coach this player, you to coach this player, you to coach this player. And we all went off to coach our players in between games. It was in a practice hall. And then he said to me, Dave, tell me what you said. And I went, and then the next coach. and he says, how many of you listened to what the player had said? And we all went, and none of us had. We're so busy giving our information, we didn't listen to what the feedback back from the player, and that was a massive lesson to myself that as a player's career develops, in the early days you're probably giving them 90% information to play the way you want them to, but very much let's say I was coaching you in the World Championships, 98% would come from him, and I might just say, look, just move over to the left when you're receiving serve, or you're just not attacking enough. It would be hopeless me of going to you in and just going like this for 2 minutes, because it just would have been a waste of time. And the point Ewan made as well is, I learned a lot when I went to Sweden and worked with the top Swedish coaches, but having that open mind, and coaches must always have that open mind. It's no good saying, oh, well, this always works. Well, it doesn't. It might work for Ewan.
It's so individual, isn't it? It's so individual. The players are individuals, the coaches are individuals, and how the message is portrayed, how the message is received is such an individual thing. So, it's certainly, knowing your player. You've talked about it, is so important, and the best relationships are clearly ones where there's been that longevity. But nonetheless, it does have to be an individual message, and certainly I'm thinking back to when I was playing, and maybe it depends whether I've won or lost a set, but equally sometimes I didn't want to come off and then just have to immediately start kind of analysing everything. Sometimes you almost want kind of 30 seconds of almost saying not too much at all, and just kind of recalibrating a little bit and resetting, and then then it's only 10 seconds of information maybe in terms of then you're on again. So knowing kind of what works for different players, and even at different times, is and so the likes of, let's say, Dylan or Chris and the coaches getting that experience and learning those type of methods and approaches is really important for, let's say, longevity of their coaching careers, and so it's definitely worth doing.
Okay, so we've as always, I've only sneaked 3 minutes, but any either lasting messages from the sessions or a general. Most of the time, Joe, you've been a watcher. I don't think you've missed a session, have you?
I maybe did 1 or 2, and then I would watch it.
Yeah. What is your general feeling? How the Zoom casts have gone?
Oh, thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm now addicted, so I want to watch every one.
Right.
Better watching than being on it.
Yeah. You've been very valuable member. And okay. Ewan?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting listening to so many of the stories, and I think what comes through is people's passion, their commitment to the sport, whether again they're an elite player or whether they've been an umpire or a coach, and I think that's what kind of unifies it all, doesn't it? That love of the game, that love of the sport, and the desire to develop themselves and the sport, and so that's been really, really encouraging to hear. So no, they've been great, and you've done well, Dave, and Mark as well, in terms of keeping the guests honest. So that's
well, with the latest lockdown news we've all had today, which is sadly not good news, but our house comes Thursday, which means we will be carrying on indefinitely to try to, as you say, keep you entertained and hopefully amused, and in some cases hopefully we've educated you a little bit. And but one of my future guests is going to be Barry Hayward. That's in 2 weeks' time. Now, Barry has the best table tennis book collection in the UK, probably, and he's going to be reviewing his favourite 10 table tennis books. So get your questions in. If you've got anything you want to know, he's going to look at autobiography, books on stroke production. He's just going to pick his 10 favourite books, and I'm going to be interviewing him on them. But that's going to be a really good Zoomcast. So can I say thank you to Joan and thank you to Ewan. But what probably ought to say, both the two of you did play for Scotland together in '97 at the same time, because you're both at that same Commonwealth. So that's you and Joan back together after 24 years. So that's good. And thank you